So the Archmage is going to have 3 hard specialization: the Adept of Hiran, the Adept of Azir, and the Adept of Hish. Don't judge me on the pronunciations, okay? So the first one is going to be heal. The second hard specialization is going to be an offensive support, and the third one is a heal as well. So the Archmage will have 2 heals and an offensive support. All right, let's go and see judges. Hi, Gisbert, how you doing, bud? It's been a while. I hope you're doing well. Let's go and see what we get. Wings of Magic, passive. Every 3 seconds, you will gain 1 stack of Wind of Magic at random, Life, Light, and Heavens, stacking up to a maximum of 3. Whenever you cast a spell of that Lord of Magic, it will consume 1 stack, if present, and augment the spell. You have access to a no cost, no cooldown toggle ability, which prevents you from using Winds of Magic while active. Okay, so I suppose this is the core mechanic here. Hey, Acid! Welcome, dude. You changed your name to Gilbert Elf? Okay. Radiant Lens, basic attack, deals 6% spell attack power and 133 elemental damage to target enemy. You generate 40 action points. Regrowth, Lore of Life, heal target ally for 22% of restoration power and 283. You rebranding? I've done it 5 times. I know the pain. Welcome. Augment it using your Winds of Magic. Apply a 21-second enchantment to the target. For the duration, the target is healed for 7% restoration power and 100 every 3 seconds. That's the additional to the 22 and 23. So a direct heal plus a hot if you augment it. Shield of Shafri. Target ally gains an enchantment for 8 seconds. They will absorb 20% restoration power and 259 damage over the duration. Okay, so that's shielding. It's also based on your restoration power. It's not a standard 300, 400 or whatever. It's so the more restoration power you have, the more shield you're going to give, the better healer you're going to be, because we're talking about mitigation of damage and healing. Lightning Bolt, Lore of Heavens, deals 19% spell attack power, 258 elemental damage to target enemy, and applies 1 stack of reduced elemental resistance. If you augment this through Winds of Magic, you deal 11% spell attack power additionally and 155 corporeal damage to target and 1 stack reduced corporeal resistance. So deal damage and debuff. Courage of Anarion. Place a 20-foot wide area on the ground. Allies in the area will have their abilities augmented. Enemies in the area will have their movement speed reduced by 50%. So this is the paddle, as we know it from the Archmage, from the other version of the game, but it does have an additional component, which is augmenting abilities for other classes, other allies. So that's for it says allies, not group. So that means everybody that's order is going to get the augments. Don't forget that Rune Priest can also augment skills. He also needs, or she needs, they need, them, they, whatever, need the augment. So this is like something on the floor that can augment your skills. There are other classes that have the ability, like if your skills are augmented. So if you play with a Rune Priest that can augment your abilities, or other classes, it's just the one that I remember. But this is going to be on the floor, which I'd like to say at this point that reminds me a lot, some of the mechanics, and I'm sure some of you are familiar with, from Guild Wars 2, where you can place a water wall, and you can do a smoke bomb if you're an engineer, and then everybody gets invisibility. Things on the floor people can use regardless if they are part of the group or not. And that kind of combination I was likely on Guild Wars 2, so we'll see how that's going to work. Hi Hasmoto, good evening to you too. This is not ROR though, but thank you. I'm back on Warhammer. This is not ROR, this is Interbellum. So an extra component on the Archmage's paddle as a healer. Abula Snare, Lore of Light, applies rooted, immovable, and 3 stacks of purity to target enemy. Purity removes the debuff Chaos gives to everybody around them, including themselves, if I remember. If this is augmented, will now also apply up to 8 other enemies within 30 feet of you. Please, and I say this to myself as well out loud, read the tooltips in detail. They've put a lot of effort on the tooltips to make things clear. So a purity spell. Awakening the Woods, Lord of Life, applies the Seed of Life to target ally. If this is augmented, causes all of your Seeds of Life stacks on the target to bloom at once. Seed of Life lasts for 1 minute and stacks up to 10 times. Whenever the target is critically hit by an enemy, a stack will bloom, restoring 6% restoration power and 82 health. So, okay, that's interesting. Haven't seen this one before as a mechanic. So you put Seed of Life in it, but if they are critically hit, then they are automatically healed for 6% restoration power and 82 health. It's kind of like I don't know, like preemptive healing, isn't it? You just place it there for a minute, which is a long time, judging, you know, how we usually do combat in this game. Lasting for a minute, it's a decent time if you're critically hit. And there's a lot of classes that hit critically. Shadow Warrior, Squig has high crit, Witch Elves, Witch Hunters. And I'm mentioning Destro classes as well, but I'm assuming this will be a similar mechanism on the Destro side. Engineers, Sniper Engineers have high crit as well. Seed of Life is a sub-mechanic of Adept of Giran. Augmented Awakening the Woods is the Force trigger. Okay. Walk Between Worlds, your damage reduction is increased by 50% and your cast time are increased by 33% for 7 seconds. This is kind of your detaunt. So get 50% damage reduction increase, so you receive 50% less, but your casting time goes up by 33%. The core tactics you're going to start with racial for this, it's going to be across the board here. We have Centuries of Training. Whenever you deal direct damage to an enemy, you have 33% chance to apply one of 3 debuffs to them. Effects do not refresh and last 6 seconds. Deals 4% melee attack power and 56 impact damage every second. Deals 6% restoration attack power and 80 piercing damage every 2 seconds. Deals 10% spell attack power and 134 spiritual damage every 3 seconds. It's kind of different from the previous versions. Form ranks. Whenever you use the basic attack, it's group mate within 100 feet that has this tactic, so pretty much every elf or Asur tactic will gain 1 stack of purity and a 4-second buff. For the duration of the buff, gain 450 penetration and 450 sagacity. Purity and the buff. Okay. Drain magic. Whenever you hit an enemy with an augmenting spell, you will dispel 1 enchantment from them. That is pretty good because spell. Whenever you hit an enemy with an augmenting spell, I'm assuming all classes I think have spells, despite the fact that it might be melee, which means the slow paddle you start with augment spells. Shadow Warrior probably can stay there and just keep spamming. Archmage as well. I don't remember if engineers get augmenting spells. Bright Wizards, so useful for everybody since it's not locked just for the elves. Run Between Worlds. Walk Between Worlds will no longer increase your cast times and it will increase your movement speed by 25% for the duration. Walk amongst, or hold on a second because I'd like to reread this. Your damage reduction. Oh, so this is your detaunt. So you have the tactic, you no longer get increased your cast times. So you receive 50% less damage, your cast time stays the same, and your movement's increased by 25%. So it's a defensive tactic to be starting with. Archmages in the hard specialization of Adept of Giran, they will be using staffs. This is important for me, in my perspective, because whether he's a healer, offensive support, or the other type of healer, right? For some classes, you can distinguish what path they're using once we get used to things, but what weapons they're holding. So he's a healer holding a staff, he's a healer equipped staffs, but this is an offensive support one-handed sword. So you see an Archmage with one-handed sword, then you know this is not a pure healer, this is offensive support, and then you can deal in combat with that accordingly. So you don't confuse the healers with the supports and what you want to focus. So knowing what weapons they equip now, because that is changing, it should help identify what you're doing. Return life. This is the resurrection. Return, and it's also a morale. So there's no normal resurrection, at least not on this. I haven't seen one. There's always part of the morale. It's a morale 1. Return target groupmate back to life at the location of its corpse with 2,000 health and no other resources. Cannot be used on corpses with Falcon. Falcon is like the stake you can see on Return of Reckoning. Basically, he's not allowed to resurrect. Some classes get that special ability where for 30 seconds they do 100% more damage. They have 500 regen a second, you know, some insane shit, and then they just die. And then they get full cord and they can be resurrected. They have to respawn by default, but they do get that 30 seconds God mode in inverted commas, because they get a lot of buffs for that duration. Downside, you can't be resurrected. You have to run back. So you you make your choices. Focus Mind, you gain a buff. That's morale 2. You gain a buff for 15 seconds. Abilities will have 50% faster cast time, and you will have 100% pushback immunity. Divine Protection, all group mates within 100 feet gain a buff for 15 seconds. They will absorb up to 120% restoration power and 1,600 damage over the duration. And Alter Fate, remove all affliction and cripples from its group mate within 100 feet. Also applies Return Life to its dead group mate within 100 feet. So these are the 4 morales: morale 1, morale 2, morale 3, and morale 4 you start with. This line here, more or less, is the same throughout pretty much all the hard specializations, and the tactics most likely will be the same or similar to the other classes. Now let's get to the interesting part. So if you watch the previous videos we did on the classes, you know that the first line pretty much has stats you can improve from initiative, toughness, weapon skill, willpower, and here's where things start getting interesting and you can start putting your points. Vital Growth, it's a passive. Whenever you augment a spell, your defensive target will gain 1 stack of Seed of Life. Oh, Seed of Life lasts for 1 minute and stacks up to 10 times. Whenever the target's critically hit by an enemy, a stack will bloom, restoring 6% restoration power and 82 health. So you can do that actively and passively now. Just need to find out where that thing was. Where did we see the Seed of Life? That's augment. There we go. Awakening of the Woods. There we go. Sorry. 1 second cast time, 20 action points. So you can do that actively, and then by putting points here, we can do this passively whenever you augment a spell. Which means if you put, as I do this, I'll try and make builds as I go along because I've never read this before. So theoretically, you could place down a Cards of an Area, which is the paddle that you know, and allies in the area have their abilities augmented. So we are augmenting a spell. I'm assuming that's how that's going to work, because then it says you augment, but the spell is yours. It doesn't say you augment your spells. So everybody going through that will allow us to apply a Seed of Life to our defensive target. So we could just keep changing defensive targets, or have a tank focused and then just keep getting all the seeds, I suppose. So if you put 3 points in this and you get it to rank 3, your defensive target will gain 3 stacks of Seed of Life, so you can do it even faster. Now, I don't know how much is 6% restoration power. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know the stats yet, how high they can go, but it's definitely something nice to have as a passive. Next line, we get a tactic called Water Rush. The action point cost of your skills is reduced by 33% on allies that are lower than 40% health. Cleansing Light, dispel 1 affliction from the target ally and applies 1 stack of purity. If this is augmented, also dispel 1 cripple and apply another stack of purity. Now, if you do get this, hold on to put some more points. If you get this lovely spell here, which only has 1 rank, you can also unlock Apotheosis tactic. Cleansing Light will now apply a 9-second enchantment to the target, stacking up to 3 times. For the duration, they will be healed for 3% restoration power and 50 every 3 seconds. So that's another, so you can use your cleanse. It has no cooldown, just 30 action points. You can keep applying a hot, plus the passive Seed of Life on your defensive target. Unless you toggle on A1, yes, Winds of Magic, you will automatically spend a Wind Lifeline in Heaven, if you have one, when you cast the Lore or Lifeline spell, and it will be augmented. So you can trigger Vital Growth quite often. Yes, but you can also, correct me if I'm wrong, you can also augment and trigger it via Cards of Arneon, right? If somebody goes through that, you augment the spell, because it says you augment a spell, not augment one of your spells. So if I put the Cards of Arneon on the floor, and if I have... Yeah, but what if somebody else goes through that and augments their spells? Does that mean that I am augmenting their spells, or I am augmenting a spell? So if, I don't know, Bright Wizards runs through a Shadow Warrior, whatever, and just shooting spells, would that activate my ability, or it has to be my spell specifically? Then we got more. My own spells. Okay, so I can sit on the pedal and just keep having that triggering all the time, or we can use Winds of Magic to do that. Nevertheless, it's multiple ways we can activate it. I was a bit more, I think, optimistic and hopeful that, you know, have a Horban run through that and keep augmenting everything, but okay, fair enough. It might have been OP otherwise. More skills, more statistics here you can pick up if you want them. I'm just putting random stuff so we can unlock more points. Radiant Return with 3 ranks passive. Radiant Lance will now generate 46 action points, and you can get that all the way up to 58. Radiant Lance is your basic attack, and it has a 2-second casting time. Radiant Gaze, morale 1. Target enemy gains 3 stacks of reduced corporeal resistance, reduced elemental resistance, and reduced spiritual resistance. So morale 1 for debuffing resistances. On the next line, starting with some tactics. Earthblood. If you have been standing still for 3 seconds, gain 3 AP regen and 720 HP 4. HP 4 is regeneration every 4 seconds. Until you move. Okay. It might be easy to stand still. I mean, healers do tend to stand still. Although, heads up, if the server comes out and you play Interbellum, the whole sitting at the back, not moving, spamming AoEs and heal doesn't exist. All the mechanics forcing you to somehow move or manage resources, so you can't just spam one button. You have to be more active on that. But this is definitely a good tactic, because you find a little bit of a time you can stop moving, keep healing, and you don't have to heal yourself. With 720 every 4 seconds and AP regen, you just need to focus on everybody else. You don't have to worry about yourself so much, provided you're not under pressure and you have to move and get next to a guard or something like that. Startide's Ebb. Lore of Heavens category. Applies an affliction to the target enemy for 12 seconds. For the duration, the target's cast times are increased by 33%. So this is a cast time increase. I'm just trying to say it's a single target. If you augment this, the effect becomes a cripple and also increases the cooldowns by 33%. So you can target somebody, let's say the enemy healer. You can increase the cast times, which is... it's devastating for a healer to have that. And you can also increase the cooldowns by 33%. I think if you're going to play... so, see, you don't just have to focus now on healing. You also have to focus on casters and screw them up. You have a double job now. Wounds, Drain Life. Radiant Lance will heal your defensive target for 150% of the damage dealt. Now, this, I kind of like this. I will tell you why. Because... on the previous version of the games, original Return of Reckoning, Flames of War, you had to use either Radiant Lance, which was dealing a lot more damage than Drain Life. There was 2 spells, so you had to have more space on your bars and pick this and pick that. Now, simply, you click that, becomes passive, and then that gains the ability. 1 less button, same things. So that's kind of nice. Net of Amintok, Morale 2. Target gains a debuff for 5 seconds for the duration of their movement speed. For the duration, their movement speed is decreased by 75%, and their mass is increased by 3. As opposed to morale, so it's a morale 2, so 75%. Try get away with that thing on your feet. Next line, tactic. Eyes of Truth. You can see players under stalk, and your abilities will dispel stalk from enemy hit. Oh, man. Oh, I can see a lot of people playing Archmages in this one. You equip the tactic. You can see players and the stalk. Stalk is the stealth, and your abilities will dispel stalk from enemy hits. All right, we need to clarify a few things about stealth and stalk in Interbellum if you haven't seen this before. So if you play a stealth class, Witch Hunter, Doc, Shaman, these are the stealth classes in Interbellum. When you go into stealth, no one can see you. And I mean no one, not even your own group can see you. You are 100% concealed from friendlies and enemies at the same time, which means they can heal you. They can see if you're there. So if you're outside of a party, you can say, oh, look, there's a group of witch hunters there, or a group of hidden dogs or shamans, whatever, on the side. And if I attack, they're going to join you. You can't see them. Friendlies or not, you can't see them. So now this is the first class that has the ability to see invisible units and attack them and get them out of stealth. So you can no longer stay permanently hidden. I'm assuming, because this is the High Elves, the Asur, we probably will have something similar on the Dark Elves, which we'll see. We'll go through this when the 4th class has been released. But this is going to piss so many people off, because so far, and we need to make this comment, so far a lot of people were like, we can stay for a very long time in Stalk, and we can attack from Stalk. Yes, like shamans, they can attack from invisibility and stay invisible, not with everything, just some skills. So I think people will try and take the piss, but now again in this version, the Archmage is the arch nemesis of the shaman. You want to be in stealth, dude? I'll take you out. It's going to be a lot of fun with this. So the Sorks will have that tactic. Ramasee, since we're on the topic, I know you don't give ETAs, but I have to ask, do you have an estimate of when the Sork will be on the builder so I can do the review? I'm moving on in the meantime. Nature's Splendor. Passive. Whenever you augment a spell, all group mates within 100 feet of you gain 1 action point, regen, for 3 seconds. Also very useful, because you're going to be doing that all the time. Oh, okay. So if he's working now on the 3rd one, so he might finish today, might be on tomorrow. If Ramasee finishes the Sork today and it's online tomorrow night we're doing the Dark Elves. All right, just doesn't. If it's ready tomorrow, I'll check tomorrow morning. If it's there, we'll do Warhammer review thingy tomorrow as well for the Dark Elves. So if we do get Star Times abs, we can also activate this tactic, which I've missed to mention, which is Starshine. Star Type's Ebb no longer has a cooldown, but the duration is decreased by 8 seconds. So this is the affliction you can do on the enemy casters for increased cast times and increased cooldown. So if you activate the tactic, don't have a cooldown, so you can spam 1, 2, 3, 4, but it's lasting less time. Next one is Barkskin, 30 action points, 150 range, Lord of Life. Applies 1 stack of enhanced piercing resistance. Enhanced, everything's enhanced basically. Impact resistance, corporeal resistance, fortitude, reduced agility, and reduced elemental resistance to target ally. What? Applies 1 stack of enhanced piercing resistance, enhanced impact, enhanced corporeal, enhanced fortitude. Oh, okay. So you enhance the piercing, the impact, the corporeal, and fortitude. And then you get also a debuff, which is reduced agility, reduced elemental. So it's like 4 buffs and 2 debuffs on this one. Where was I? Okay, here, Arhcmage. If you augment this one, applies an enchantment on top of the things we've mentioned, applies an enchantment of 8 seconds for the duration. The damage reduction is increased by 20%. Nice. So what do you say, Ramasee? It makes them like a tree, basically. All right, so you increase their piercing because of the bark, the impact because of the bark. You increase the corporeal resistance and fortitude. I think fortitude is wounds, and then they don't have agility as a tree. Elemental resistance goes down. Okay, makes sense. And because of the bark skin, if you augment it, you also increase the damage reduction and take 20% less damage. Cloak of Dane. Shield of Sapphire absorbs 10% more damage. The Shield of Sapphire is on the basic skills, and basically it's an enchantment for 8 seconds that will absorb 20% of your restoration power plus 259 damage over those 8 seconds. Now you can give an extra 10%. It kind of sounds nice. Just gonna put some points to unlock the next line. Living Seeds. The healing over time effect of regrowth and Seeds of Life can now critically heal. Ooh, nice. This is kind of new, the horizontal path, actually to 3 skills. So let's see what this is. Rampant Growth 1. So these apply to regrowth up there, which is your first basic heal. Regrowth direct heal is 10% more effective on targets that have regrowth over time effect. So if you casted this with an augment and you give them the augment, which also you apply 21 second enchantment to target, for the duration is healed for 7% over 3 seconds. So if you have this passive, you increase the next spell you do on them, augmented or not, by 10%. If you pick that, you can go to Rampant Growth 3. Oh, that requires 2 points on that, so it's 25% more effective. Regrowth effect is now a blessing. I suppose this has to do with debuffing and capabilities. And you can go even further with another passive with 2 ranks on it. Regrowth will now apply the overtime effect to 1 other ally within 30 feet. Sorry, if you max it out to 2 ranks, you will apply the overtime effect, the hot, to 2 other allies within 30 feet of the target. I mean, for a healer, that is kind of must. So we talked about the bark skin. Blessing is stage 2 dispels. It's harder to dispel a blessing than an enchantment. Thank you for the clarifications there, Ramasee. So bark skin, which is the defensive enchantment. All right, reduction of damage, increase of resistances. If we get this, we can unlock the following. First tactic, Curse of Thorns. Enemies that attack allies affected by your Barskin, Fortune's Renewal, and Regrowth effects will take 12% spell attack power and 147 corporeal damage. So you need to pick Barskin. So whether you apply it or not, as long as you have the tactic, you give Thorns to the people who have used Regrowth. And don't forget, this is a healer spec, and Regrowth basically is your main healing spell. All right, 50 action points, you have 300, and you can generate more with Radiant Lance and regeneration or whatever. But giving them this, at least for 3 seconds, that the hot might be ticking through augmentation, you can give them Thorns and reflect damage. Aspect of the Forest, which is a passive through Barskin. Again, whenever you augment Barskin, you will also gain the enchantment effect. The enchantment effect. Oh, we get it. So if it's augmented and we apply the 8-second enchantment to the target for damage reduction, we get it as well. Okay, that's good. So we can last longer. Wings of Heaven, it is a morale 3. Gain a debuff for 5 seconds, which reduces your mass by 8. Leap forward and apply a snare to up to 9 enemies within 20 feet of where you land. A snare reduces movement speed by 30% for 16 seconds. Ooh, I like that morale. It reduces your mass bait. Okay, we're going to be more susceptible to CC, but we're going to leap forward and then ensnare people, and then we can start moving backwards, healing and protecting, giving an opportunity to the rest of the elves or the allies that are following through to engage easier. Dissipation Expert, another tactic. Whenever you use an ability that removes a buff or debuff, you will gain 15 adrenaline per second for 3 seconds. So I'm assuming that's 45 adrenaline. This tactic is a morale buff through removing buffs and debuffs. Master of Giran is another tactic. Every 5 seconds, you generate 1 wind of life. Now, don't forget, winds are used to augment spells. So if you're playing a healer, this is a healing specialization. You're most likely going to be using more life aspects of that. Because winds of magic that you can use the life aspect of it to enhance your spells, it's random. So this one will generate you 1 wind of life, guarantee, plus whatever random else you're going to be getting. Uranus Thunderbolts deals 18% spell attack power, 240 elemental damage, up to 9 enemies within 20-foot area you select. If you augment this one, reduce the cast time by 1.5 seconds. So the original casting time is 2.5. If you augment it through Winds of Magic or you're sitting on your own paddle, it comes down to 1 second. It's a nice area. Abundance, passive, and you can buff it up 4 times, 4 ranks. Whenever you critically heal someone, you will apply an enchantment on them for 5 seconds. Effects do not refresh. At the end of the duration, target will restore 3% restoration power and 56 health. So basically, if we pick this, whenever we crit, this reminds me a little bit of the World of Warcraft. What's the name of that thing? Druid. The Druid. He had the spell like that. It was ticking, and at the end, it was doing a burst of healing. This one doesn't heal in between, but when you critically heal someone, after 5 seconds, they get an extra heal. So what happens if we don't run out of points? Because don't forget, you only get 31 points, so you have to be really careful where you place them to get to the bottom. You can't pick everything. So if we max this one out, whenever 5 seconds again, so it goes all the way up to 14% restoration power. So you increase your healing from 3% all the way up to 14%. Winter's Frost. This is a morale 4. Up to 24 enemies within a 20-foot area you select become rooted, silenced, and disarmed. Ooh. Rooted reduces target's movement speed to 0 for 5 seconds. Silence prevents them from using spells for 5 seconds. Disarmed prevents them from using skills for 5 seconds. Oh my god, how devastating this morale 4 can be. I mean, I don't know how sieges are going to work on Interbellum, if they're going to be sieges or whatnot. But imagine if, let's say, a situation of funneling and you have an entire warband going through and it's been building up for a while and there isn't enough adrenaline, morale point, to be used. And then you just, up to 24, you just 5 seconds, they can move, they can cast, they can heal, they can DPS, they can do anything. And they can attack you with, I mean, wow. I suppose the only thing they could do would be use their own morals. And that would be the extent of it for 5 seconds. The question is, this is a question. The question is, oh, they will still. I mean, if they get rooted, silence, and disarm, they're still going to get the debuffs. So you can't chain them every 5 seconds. Okay, so they're still going to get the debuffs. Storm of Renewal. Lord of Life applies a 15-second enchantment to all group mates within 100 feet of you. For the duration, they will be healed for 13% restoration power and 166 every 3 seconds. If this spell is augmented, Also applies up to 4 allies within 20 feet of each groupmate. 50-second enchantment to all groupmates with 100 feet. Alright, so you heal them for a certain amount of time every second. It's a hot 100 feet, everybody. And if it's augmented, wherever they are, they also heal 4 allies within or within the group or outside of the group, 20 feet off them. So that is fairly powerful, and suppose this is something you need to pick up as a healer. 3-second cast, 100 action points. A bit expensive, but it does sound powerful. And this is the so-called zero busting abilities that we have for people clustering up. 150 action points, a 3-second channel. You deal 10% spell attack power and 50 elemental damage every 0.5 seconds, up to 48 enemies within a 30-foot area you select. Each time an enemy is hit by this ability, they can gain a stack that increases damage they take from this ability by 25% for 1 second. This ability deals no damage to targets that have cover from you. So we cast it, we deal damage to someone, they gain a stack, and then they take 25%. So we attack every 0.5 seconds, so they can get up to 2 stacks. Okay. So basically, every time we hit them, they get the stack, and they can take 25 and then 25. And I suppose then it resets. So it's an offensive zero busting ability. Now I know that some of these may not sound like much, right? But A, it's a healer. B, this is something you're only going to use when there are a lot of people. This is why we call them the zero busting abilities. You're not going to use this in a 6v6, not even in 12 or 18 versus 18. You're only going to use this in big fights when people are clustering, because you can hit up to 48 people. And that's what makes it worth it. If you add up 48 people times 10% plus 50 plus 25, then that's when it comes in. Otherwise, it's not something that you can use in everyday thing, but it's good to see. This is the last skill here, and that concludes the Adept of Giran for the Archmage, which is a healing spec. And we'll move on now to the Adept of Asur, which is the offensive support. Hey Futuro, is Interbellum server up and running? Not yet. No, the Interbellum server is not up and running yet. We're just reviewing the classes as they release them. At the moment, the only active servers is Flame of War and Return of Reckoning, with more popular being still Return of Reckoning. So let's go and see what is the difference between the Adept of Giran, which is a healer, to the Adept of Asur, which is an offensive support. Here is the basic mechanic, of course, Winds of Magic. We've seen Radiant Lance, which is your basic attack. You still get your Lightning Bolt. Deadlock applies silence and inevitable to target enemy. Silence prevents the use of spells for 5 seconds. Inevitable. Sorry guys, there was a phone there. Inevitable prevents application of disarm and silence for 20 seconds. So that's pretty much the debuff. But as an offensive support, you gain silence. Summer Hit, Lord of Life, applies a 12-second alignment to target enemy. For the duration, target takes 20% spell attack power and 271 corporeal damage every 2 seconds. If you augment this, reduces the cast time by 1.5, so from 2.5 seconds, go down to 1. I will read this again because I kind of lost it for a second. Applies a 12-second alignment to target enemy. For the duration, target takes 20% sub. Oh, it's a dot and takes every 2 seconds. So it's not a channel though, because I mean the icon from the previous versions is like the beam, but now it looks like the beam is becoming a dot, and it deals the damage every 2 seconds. There's only one bad thing about the beams, both the Shaman and the Archmage, is the fact that they paint a nice big target on your back. And the Arhcmage has more spells like that, you know, because you're sitting there, you could be behind a bush, and there's a big white line or a big green light saying, "Hey, I'm over here. Hello, I'm over here. You can shoot me. I'm over here." You know what I mean? Well, every other class can throw an arrow, you don't see it or whatever, and they can be cheeky. Those two classes is like, we're over here. Cards of Anarian, this is also the paddle. So if you're stepping on it or your allies, you also increase your speed. Enemies have the speed reduced by 50%, the paddle as we know it, and also augments your skills and the skills of everybody on either side that go through the paddle. Abula Snare, Lord of Light, applies root, immovable, and 3 stacks of purity to target enemy. If you augment this, you also apply up to 8 other enemies within 30 feet of you, so they are immobilized. And also removes the Chaos Mechanic. Fortune's Renewal applies a 12-second enchantment to target ally. For the duration, the critical hit rate is increased by 15%. If you augment it, applies up to 5 other allies within 30 feet of the target. Reminder, this is an offensive support. It specializes on buffs and debuffs that help you deal more damage to your enemies. So this is a 15% critical hit rate increase. Walk Between Worlds. This is your basic detaunt, if you like. Your damage reduction is increased by 50%, and your cast times are increased by 33% for 7 seconds. I think this is a good point because we've seen this on the Adept of Giran over here, that pretty much in Interbellum, everything you do, pretty much everything, has a downside as well. So you increase your damage reduction. In some classes, you also deal 90% less damage. So you cannot detaunt target A and nuke target B. So if you're going to detaunt somebody, it's for saving your ass. It's not for receiving 0 damage here and applying 100% damage there. In this case here, since this is an offensive support on a healer kind of thing, you may receive 50% less damage, but your casting times go up. So there's always a downside, which means you gotta make some serious choices when to use this and if to use them. And when I think the server is up, we all gonna have a little bit of a hard time to adjust to this, because we're used to, oh, let's detaunt this, DPS this, let's detaunt that, DPS that. In this case, it's not gonna be that. It's gonna feel weird. So the tactics, I think they are the same. I'll go through them one more time. Whenever you deal direct damage to an enemy, you have a 33% chance to apply one of these. So basically it's a debuff. They do not refresh and they last for 6 seconds. And you either do 4% melee attack power and impact damage, or 6% restoration and 80 pierce damage, or a 10% spell attack power and spiritual damage every 3 seconds. Form ranks. Whenever you use the basic attack, each group mate with 100 feet that has this tactic, which means everybody who's elf and it's a group mate, it's part of the group, needs to have the tactic slotted, will gain 1 stack of purity and a 4-second buff. For the duration of that, they will gain 450 penetration and 450 sagacity. So you need to have that. I suppose this is a good combo or a good tactic to have if the elves are going to find chaos, counter their chaos mechanic. Whenever you hit an enemy with an augmenting spell, you will dispel 1 enchantment from them. Also pretty good. Passive dispel of enchantments. Walk Between Worlds no longer increases your cast time and also increases your movement speed by 25% for the duration. The kind of racial ones you start with, so the same. So if you use detaunt, basically your cast times don't go up. You still receive your 50% less damage, but you also move 25% faster. The Adept of Asur, being an offensive support, will be equipping one-handed swords over staffs that the healer did. Return to Life, Morale 1, that's your resurrection. Focus Mind is your 100% pushback immunity, Morale 2. Divine Protection is Morale 3. All group mates with 100 feet gain the buff for 15 seconds. It's an absorption of 120 restoration power and 1,600 damage over the duration of the enchantment. And of course, Other Fate, which removes all affliction, cripples, and resurrects everybody in your group within 100 feet. That is your Morale 4. And that is how you're going to start the game. It's pretty much the same as the healer, more or less, but slight changes. Now let's go to the interesting part. I'm just going to click a couple of those. Oh, I forgot. Let me just get my points back. Sign. So I'm just putting a couple of points so we can open up the next levels here. Signs in the sky. It's a passive. You can add 4 points to that. Whenever you augment a spell, you will gain a stack of a 15-second buff, maximum 3 stacks. Whenever you cast Lightning Bolt or Rain's Thunderbolt, consume all stacks to deal an additional 3% per stack. So 12% per stack, that means 36% more damage if you max this out and you have all stacks. This is not too bad, it's not too hard to achieve this, because whenever you augment a spell, you just do a couple of other spells while sitting on your own puddle. And that's, I suppose, the easiest way of doing it. Next line, far sight, career tactic. Your range is increased by 20%. Bark skin, we've seen this one before. On the healer side, this is an enchantment which increases your piercing, impact, corporeal resistance, also enhances your fortitude, but it gives you a debuff as well, reducing your agility and elemental resistance. If you augment this, you also will receive 20% less damage. The target will also receive 20% less damage. Ballistics, strength, intelligence, shocked. It's a passive. Whenever you critically heal an enemy, apply shock to them. Shocked lasts for 10 seconds. Each time the target is hit by lightning bolt or Uranus thunderbolt, the target will take 4% spell attack power and 30 indirect elemental damage and refresh the duration of shocked. Okay, I picked this one. This opened up 2 new paths. Chain lightning. Whenever your shocked status effects deals damage, it will now deal damage to 1 additional enemy within 30 feet. 2 additional, 3 additional. On level 2, hold on a second, because so on level 1 you deal to 1 extra target, level 2 to 2 additionals, level 3 to 3. Okay, sorry, because I kind of got confused by the 2 lines of text there. So chain lightning, you put all 3 points to this, you can hit 3 more people if they're shocked. Shocked is applied whenever you critically hit somebody. And it's so basically you gotta hit him with anything, crit, apply the shock, and then use your lightning or Uranus Thunderbolt, and then you create automatically chain lightning. Arc Blast, which the tactic unlocks with shocked. Whenever you apply shock to a target, you will also apply 1 stack of reduced hardiness and 1 stack of reduced fortitude in them. Hardiness, the thing is like toughness, and fortitude is like wounds. So they'll work together. Net of Amirok, this is the morale 2. Target gains a debuff 5 seconds. For the duration, the movement speed is decreased by 75 and their mass is increased by 3. So you slow them down, but you also make them harder to be CC'd again for a little bit. Mass is the statistic that controls how hard, how easy it is to to be CC'd in general. Hardness makes them more likely to be crit. Fortitude makes them take more critical damage. Oh, thank you, Ramasee. Because all the new stats have new names. I don't remember all of them, but there you go. Hardiness makes them more likely to be crit, and fortitude makes them more critical, take more critical damage. It's a defensive for it, and you're reducing it. Okay. On the same line, because you skip slightly line here just to see where this opens up, and we'll also talk about it in Amirok. Radiance Glaze is the same as on the healer spec, which is a morale 1. Target enemy gains 3 stacks of reduced corporeal, elemental, and spiritual resistance. It's just a debuff. Cleansing Light. Dispel 1 affliction from target ally and apply 1 stack of purity. If you augment this, also dispel the cripple and apply another stack of purity. Agility, we don't want that. Improved Omens, tactic. Fortune's Renewal will now always target you. When augmented, it will apply around you as well. Fortune's Renewal. Now I have to find that one because I haven't done. Fortune's Renewal. Apply 12-second enchantment to target ally. For the duration, the critical hit rate is increased by 15%. So Okay, so with this tactic here, improved omens, we get the enchantment for 12 seconds, which increases your hit rate, your critical hit rate, by 15%. So we have this tactic and shocked, which is every time you critically hit an enemy, then we can apply the shock and do the chain lightning through that. And we only buff the people around us instead of specifically target them, since improved omens will automatically make that spell target us. It helps with the targeting. Next line, Eyes of Truth. Again, even the healer had this, so the offensive support had this. With this tactic, you can see players in Stalk, that is stealth, and your abilities will dispel Stalk from the enemies you hit. Radiant Return. Radiant Lance will now generate 46 action points. You can do that a couple of times there and go up to 52. So some of your skills here will require you to have action points, so you got to maintain that up, and this is the way you do it to your basic attack, which unfortunately for me, it's a 2-second cast. I don't like really long casting spells myself, but it is what it is. Split Lightning, career tactic. Lightning Bolt will now hit 2 additional enemies within 30 feet of the primary target, but will deal 20% less damage. Usually, I don't like to pick tactics like that reduce damage to hit more people. Of course, it makes sense, right? So it doesn't become OP. However, in this case, it might not be too bad, because you really don't want that. You don't care about the 20% because you want to hit more people to apply shocked, right? Get the amplification here to create the chain lightning. So even if you hit this guy with 2 guys with 20% less damage, then the chain lightning will hit them again, which is a benefit because you applied shock to more people. So if you keep critting, those guys become new sources of chain lightning. I suppose that can cascade quite a bit if your crit is high enough. So, and also if you have the other tactic here, you can also start reducing the hardiness and fortitude so they can receive criticals easier and more critical damage. So it looks like the offensive support is really going to be based on crit. You're going to have a lot of crit if you're going to go for the whole chain lightning path. I don't know if there's another play here, but this is the one that comes straight out. It's just that some classes have 2 different gameplays, but at the moment, this is the one I can identify here. Improved Lightning Bolt. The cast time of Lightning Bolt is reduced by 0.1 second, so there's 5 ranks to that. You can use it by half a second, so we'll go down to 1.5 seconds. And if it's augmented, also dealing a lot of damage. Uranon's Thunderbolt. Finally, we find the spell we've been reading about. Deals 18% spell attack power and 240 elemental damage to up to 9 enemies within 20-foot area you select. If it's augmented, reduce the cast time by 1.5 seconds. So from 2.5 it goes to 1 second. It has no cooldown, however it does cost 75 action points. And I think this will be your main problem here to maintain your AP. Because you have 300, so pretty much you can do 4 times the spell. Then you need 2 seconds to cast Radiant Lance to generate 48 action points if you have the tactic, otherwise it's 40. But we have to see this in action, we have to see this in the game and see how that works well or bad. But Uranus Thunderbolt also unlocks Lightning Storm, which is a passive. Whenever you augment Lightning Bolt or Uranus Thunderbolt, you will apply a 2-second debuff to target hit. At the end of the duration, the target will take 2% spell attack power and 27 spiritual damage. This effect can critically hit and trigger shocked. So this gives you another way of applying shocked, at least better chances of applying shocked. Not always, you can do that up to 3 times. So you increase the damage a little bit as it goes up. Wings of Heaven, morale 3, gain a debuff 5 seconds, will reduces your mass by 8, leap forward and apply ensnare to up to 9 enemies within 20 feet, And snare reduces movement speed by 30% for 16 seconds. Moving on to the next line, Dissipation Expert. I think that's the same one as the healer. Yes. Whenever you use an ability that removes a buff or debuff, you will gain 15 adrenaline per 5 seconds. Sorry, 15 adrenaline per second for 3 seconds. So basically, it's a morale pump tactic if you want it. Master of Asur. Every 5 seconds, you generate 1 Wind of Heavens. I've missed 3 things. Oh. All right. Sorry. My bad. Yeah, it's sometimes, you know, the lines. Anyways, so we've seen that one. Okay. Curse of Thorns, another tactic. Enemies that attack allies affected by your Barskin, Fortune Renewal, or Growth effects will take 12% spell attack power and 147 corporeal damage. Same tactic as the healer. You give thorns to people when you heal them or defend them. Blessing of Asurian, passive. Gain 25% pushback immunity. Theoretically, you can stack that all the way up to 3 ranks that it has and go up to 75% pushback immunity. Thank you, Ramasee, for showing me that I've missed this. Fate of Doom. Whenever you deal direct damage to enemies, if they die within 3 seconds, they will have Falcorn. Ooh, also very nice. Falcorn means they cannot be resurrected. They have to release and come back. Direct damage. Okay. Direct damage is also AoE, by the way. AoE also counts as direct damage. So I was just thinking with the chain lightning and the augment here. So that would be nice. All right, going back to the other line, I already talked about Dissipation Expert. Master of Asur, every 5 seconds you generate 1 Wind of Heavens. Since we're most likely going to be using heaven points on the wind system, Winds of Magic system, we're going to need more Wind of Heavens generated, since the other points, life and light and heavens are generated randomly. You could get life, light, heavens. You know, I don't know how exactly it is, but it's random, so it could be anyway. Having a standard one will allow you to cast your lightning spells. Brilliance. What is Brilliance? Lord of Light deals 4% spell attack power, 51 spiritual damage. Applies 1 stack of reduced accuracy, applies 1 stack of reduced dodge, and applies 1 stack of purity to target and up to 8 enemies within 30 feet of them. If it's augmenting, deals an additional 4% spell attack power and 51 spiritual damage. So, looks like we have 2 races that can deal with chaos. Empire and Elves. That corruption thing the chaos has is really annoying. Aftershock, passive with 4 ranks. Whenever you critically hit an enemy, you will apply a 5-second alignment to them that cannot refresh. At the end of the duration, target will take 1% spell attack power and 15 indirect elemental damage. So that can go all the way up to, if I can actually get the points so I can see the exact numbers, it can go all the way up to 10% spell attack power and 150 indirect elemental damage. Winterfrost, morale 4, it's the same as the healers. Up to 24 enemies within 20-foot area you select become rooted, silenced, and disarmed. First Portent of Amul, Lord of Heavens, applies 1 stack of a 10-second buff to all groupmates within 100 feet of you. Their next attack will deal double damage. If this is augmented, applies 2 stacks. So you give them 2 shots, the next 2 spells with double damage. 40 action points. Whew. You gotta spam that. Reminder, we're looking at an offensive support. The job is to debuff the enemy or buff the friendlies to deal more damage along with his own damage. So this one gives double damage to the group. The whole path here with Shocked, Uran's Thunderbolt, Lightning Bolt also give you Chain Lightning, AoE, application of Shock that increases critical and all this. You can increase the critical strike chance of your group or yourself And of course, you have your buffs and debuffs. You remove debuffs or buffs from the enemies, debuffs from yourself, from your group, and buffs from the enemy. And you also have a little bit of protection with bark skin. So overall, you do AoE damage, you amplify the friendly's damage, you remove buff and debuffs, and allow them to hand you deal more damage. You have a couple of dots. You also augment your spells and everybody else's spells that needed to be augmented. So as the support goes, it seems like a very active and nice gameplay. All right, so the Archmage, that's the second hard specialization of the Archmage, which is an offensive support. And now we're going to see the third hard specialization, which is also a healer. And now we're going to have to compare with the first one a little bit and see what we get different here. What's the difference in those two healing specializations? So, third hard specialization, healing again, Adept of Hish. Again, we have the same mechanic, the Winds of Magic, which are randomly generated. So depending what type of spell you're going to use, you use one stack to automatically augment them. Radiant Lance is standard throughout the three specializations. Your basic attack, 2-second cast time, you deal damage, you generate action points. Boon of Hish, something new here. Restores 37% restoration power and 483 health to target ally. That is a big heal. The other two don't have that. Augmented restores an additional 22% restoration power and 280 health to the target. That is a massive heal. I'm looking at the first three, trying to see like, how did we heal on the previous one? The previous one had a lot of hots, the Seeds of Life. So this works more like a druid kind of thing. Hots. Let's say another hot that doesn't heal, but at 5 seconds it does a burst of health. Bark skin. So this is more of a hot kind of situation here, I think, and this is more of direct healing. We'll see. We'll move on. Lightning bolts, similar, the same as the other two classes. You deal damage, and you also apply one stack of reduced elemental resistance. If you augment it, 11% more spell attack power damage and 155 corporeal damage. And you also apply one stack of reduced corporeal resistance. Regrowth, you heal for 22% and 283. If it's augmented, you also apply the enchantment for 21 seconds, which heals 7% and 100 every 3 seconds. So it becomes a hot as well. Direct heal and hot. Cards of Anarion is the 20-foot paddle, which reduces movement of enemies by 50% and augments our abilities and all allies. Deadlock, I think Deadlock is the detaunt. Oh no, Deadlock applies silence and inevitable to the target enemy. So this is the silence. Cleansing Light, dispel one affliction from target ally and apply one stack of purity. If it's augmented, also dispel the cripple and apply another stack of purity. So this class gets the cleansing a little bit sooner than the other two, and an extra big heal here so far. Walk Between Worlds, your damage reduction is increased by 50% and your cast time increased by 33%. This is your detaunt. Tactics, having a quick look because we already read them once, but we'll do them again. Centuries of Training. So whenever you deal direct damage to an enemy, 33% chance to apply a debuff on them, which is random, which means you either do 4% melee attack power and 56 impact damage every second, or 6% range attack power, and 80 piercing damage every 2, or 10% spell attack power and 134 spiritual every 3. If you use the basic attack, every group made with 100 feet that has the same tactic as you will gain 1 stack of purity and a 4-second buff. For the duration of that buff, you will gain 450 penetration and 450 sagacity. Drain magic, whenever you hit an enemy with an augmenting spell, you will dispel 1 enchantment from them. And I think pretty much every spell should be augmented on these builds anyways. Run Between Worlds. Run Between Worlds. Walk Between Worlds will no longer increase your cast times and it will increase your movement speed by 25%. So basically your detaunt, it removes the cast time reduction from the detone, and it gives you speed buff. This hard specialization can equip staffs, and then we have the 4 standard racial morals. Morale 1, Resurrection. Morale 2, Focus Mind, that gives you 100% pushback immunity, and you will cast 50% faster. Divine Protection, it's a group morale, a buff for 15 seconds, so you will absorb 120 restoration power and 1,600 damage over time. And Alter Fate, which removes all affliction and cripples from all group mates and also returns to life its dead group mate within 100 feet, and they can jump up and say, "Thank you so much." They never will, but they think about it, but they never type it. So let's go now and see the major differences. So far, between the first healing spec and this, we have that this guy also here has absorb shields and hots, right? And this guy doesn't have the shields, but it has a massive heal here and 1 hot if you augment it, and that's it. So let's have a look what else gets. Light blue. Whenever you augment a spell, 1 group mate within 100 feet of you gains 1 stack of purity. You can buff that up 3 points. So 3 group mates within 100 feet of you gain a stack of purity. More stats. So the first one, yeah, whenever you augment a spell, your target gains 1 stack of Seed of Life. So you apply that Seed of Life that lasts for a minute, and if they're critically hit, then they heal for a certain amount. That is one difference there. Next line, Water Rush. Career tactic. The action point cost of your skills is reduced by 33% on allies that are lower than 40% health. Blessing of Asurian. Gain 25% pushback immunity. And if you put all 4 points, you have 100% pushback immunity, making you a better frontline healer. You cannot pretty much be pushed back at all. You can be interrupted, but you don't have any pushback, which is kind of great. So the first hard specialization, I suppose, mobile, you just hot. Pretty much everything is more or less instant or 2-second cast time. Everything, I mean, except the main heal, everything else is kind of instant or passive. So things are starting to work on their own kind of thing, so you can move around. This feels more static. But like I said again, we got to see this in action and see what happens. Star Tide's Ebb. Applies an affliction to target enemy for 12 seconds. For the duration, target cast times are increased 33%. If you augment this, it becomes a cripple and also increases their cooldowns. Now, if we do pick this, it opens up Starshine Tactic, where Tide's Ebb no longer has a cooldown, but the duration is decreased by 8 seconds. So your cast time increase and your cooldown increase, one lasts 12 seconds, it would last 12. And also it has 12 seconds cooldown. It's a single target. So either you affect somebody every 12 seconds or you spam it and you affect them for 4. Personally, I would stick with, it depends. I mean, if I was the only Archmage adept of Hish, I'll probably do the tactic so I can spam this. Otherwise, I wouldn't pick the tactic. And just make sure that at least one healer is kind of screwed constantly, or one spellcaster. Radiant Gaze, in all 3 hard specializations, there is the Morale 1. Target enemy gains 3 stacks of reduced corporeal, elemental, and spiritual resistance as a debuff, Morale 1. Next line, Apotheosis, Cleansing Light, which is your debuff basically, spell. We now apply a 9-second enchantment on the target, stacking up to 3 times. For the duration, they will be healed for 3% restoration power and 50 every 3 seconds. So with this tactic, it becomes like the current version of Return of Reckoning, where you heal somebody and, you debuff something, and then you also apply a heal. Summer Hit, 2.5 second cast time. Applies a 12-second alignment to target enemy. For the duration, target takes 20% spell attack power and 271 corporeal every 2 seconds. If you augment this, you reduce the cast time by 1.5 seconds and make it 1 second cast time. So augmentation plays a vital role to these builds on the Archmage. Enlightenment, you have, it's a passive, you can select it once. You have 2% increased damage reduction from an enemy per stack of purity they have. Ooh. Oh, nice. Nice. Phase protection, if I said that one correctly. Your outgoing healing is reduced by 10%. Whenever you cast Radiant Lance or Healing Energy, your defensive target is blessed for 10 seconds if they are a group mate within 150 feet of you. They are blessed for 10 seconds. Your heals are 35% more effective against targets with past protection. Oh, okay. So with this tactic, I suppose you, with inverted commas always, convert your healer to a pocket healer for one player and you increase your healing by 25% because your outgoing healing is reduced by 10 and your heals on the specific target, which is affected by this, increased by 35. So I suppose that's 25% more healing to the target with the enchantment. Your defensive target. Net of Amirok is a Morale 2, exists in all 3 hard specializations. It's a debuff for 5 seconds for the duration. The enemy movement speed is decreased by 75 and their mass is increased by 3. Demon Bane, career tactic. Whenever you deal direct damage against an enemy that has any chaos corruption, you will deal 33% additional damage. What? In addition, for the next 6 seconds, your outgoing healing will be increased by 10%. What? Oh, man. So you can... oh, wow. I mean, Chaos has pretty much permanent corruption on them. So you gain... I mean, you're a healer, but you still have to deal damage with this one. So that is actually... It's getting pretty interesting. Anyways, I'm not making a build, but this is interesting. Because you also increase your outgoing healing by 10%. So you can deal 10% damage. Screw the 33 additional damage because you're a healer. But you gain your 10% back. Plus 35% from fast protection. Right? So basically that tactic, if you deal damage, it negates your 10% outgoing healing. So you DPS some chaos dude, then just once, then for 6 seconds you get your 10% back from fast protection. You heal everybody normally within those 6 seconds because you don't, that one is being negated. And then your defensive target, if he needs focusing, you can give him 35%, full 35% extra there. So it's a lot of active stuff here and a lot of things to look out for. Drain Life, another passive. Radiant Lance will heal your defensive target for 150 of the damage dealt. And if you put 2 ranks to it, it becomes 300% of the damage dealt. And this one deals spell attack power. It's really important to also notice that a lot of the things we read, and this is why I keep reading spell attack power or restoration power. Spell attack is an offensive stat, right, for spells, but you're a healer, so you need to have restoration power for healing. So your Radiant Lance is not going to be dealing as much because I don't know how much spell attack power you're going to have. And since the stats are going to be randomized on the gear and you're going to have to find the right ones, there might be moments that your spell attack power might be low, but still 300% should compensate if you're going to be using that. And it's a good thing to have it because you're going to be using, most likely you're going to be using Radiant Lance for the 2 seconds to build up your action points to use your other spells. So you might as well be able to heal your defensive target through that process. Speed of Light, passive, 5 ranks on this. Reduce the cooldown on Boon of His by 1 second. So that goes down to 5 if you put all the points. And that means that spell gets a cooldown of 5 seconds. This is your big, strong healing spell on this specialization. Brilliance, 1.5 second cast time, deal 4% spell attack power, 51 spiritual damage, applies 1 stack of reduced Agility, 1 stack of reduced dodge, and applies 1 stack of purity to target and up to 8 enemies within 30 feet of them. Now, Radiance combined with Demon's Bane, which increases your damage by 33%. Right? But I think we've seen a tactic here somewhere. We've seen, which one was it? There was one somewhere that said you deal more damage depending how many stacks of purity it has. Let me find that one. Where was that one? Anyways, moving on. Where are we? We are on Sailor's Blessing. Boon of His will now heal all group mates within 100 feet of you when you cast, but will heal for 60% less. So this is for converting a single target to an AoE with the typical negative of healing for less. Inspiration, also passive. Whenever you heal a target with the Boon of His or healing energy, their AP regen will be increased by 1 for 3 seconds. And if we think by 5 for 3 seconds. AP regen skill. Okay. Shimmering Cloak. Reduce the cooldown of Walk Between Worlds by 5 seconds. That can go all the way up by 15. This is your debuff. It has a 60-second cooldown. I don't think I would actually put any points on this, to be honest myself. Brilliance, that gives the debuff for reduction on dodge agility and also adds purity, also unlocks a tactic called Bolt of Illumination. Brilliance will now deal its damage 4 times to the target and apply 4 stacks of its effects. This ability no longer affects targets beyond the primary. So it becomes a single target, but it deals 4 times the debuffs. Wings of Heaven, Morale, it's the same one throughout the 3 hard specializations here. It's a Morale 3. Gain a debuff for 5 seconds, which reduces your mass by 8. Leap forward and apply Ensnared to up to 9 enemies within 20 feet where you land. Pretty much like the leap the Swordmaster used to have, but this is a massive slow. It is 30% for 16 seconds. Dissipation Expert, also in every specialization. It's a tactic. Whenever you use an ability that removes a buff or debuff, you will gain 15 adrenaline per second for 3 seconds. It's your morale buff if you want to have that. Also, a small reminder here about tactics. In Interbellum, when it comes online, you can change your tactics in combat. You don't have to go out of combat, so you can have your sets, I suppose, through the add-on. Preset. So you can have one for small fights, one for warband fights, one for like buffing your morale or something else. And you say, oh shit, I need more morale. Let me switch to this. My morale is up. Now I just need to maintain it. Let me switch back to this. So you'll have that ability. Barskin, same as the previous 3 specializations where you apply enhanced piercing, impact, corporeal resistance, you enhance fortitude, and you reduce agility, elemental resistances. If you augment it for 8 seconds, you also receive 20% less damage, the target of this enchantment. Master of His, this is the every 5 seconds you generate 1 wind of light. Purifying Lights, passive, you have 1% outgoing damage and healing against any target, ally or enemy, per stack of purity on them. So it has 4 ranks, so that can go all the way up to 5%. Winterfrost is the morale 4 with 3,600 adrenaline required. 24 enemies within 20-foot area you select become rooted, silenced, and disarmed. I think this specific morale is going to screw a lot of people trying to get somewhere on the big fights. Healing Energy. 20 action points, 1.5 second cast time, no cooldown. Castable while moving. Restore 7% restoration power and 87 health and apply 1 stack of purity to target ally. If you augment this, restore an additional 6% restoration power and 66 health. Nice. And it's not very expensive, 20 action points. Flames of the Phoenix. It's the same Zerg Busting ability as the other two specializations. It's a 3-second channel. You will deal 10% spell attack power and 50 elemental damage every 0.5 seconds, so twice a second, up to 48 enemies within the 30-foot area you select. Each time an enemy is hit by this ability, they gain a stack that increases damage they take from this ability by 25% for 1 second. This ability deals no damage to targets that have cover from you. Just a reminder, cover means you don't have a tank holding the line in front of you. So when you're going to use that, you got to be very careful where the tanks are. And I know this may sound a little bit horrible because, yeah, tanks are going to be at the front, so we can't affect the bad guys. There are other classes that have abilities that can help you remove cover. You can punt them, you can hook down, you can disarm them, silence them. There are Zerg Baxton abilities that prevent them from using that, if I remember, and stuff like that. So the coordination is important. Again, I think that's another aspect or idea from Guild Wars 2, where you have to coordinate the attacks and you have to use each other's abilities to maximize things. Anyways, this concludes here the Archmage with the 3 hard specializations. The Archmage has the first one, which is a healer, a little bit more mobile with some defensive spells such as shields and barkskin and hots and that help you heal. Middle path, which is a Depth of Azir, it's an offensive support, mainly lightning spells as an offensive support, where you have a little bit of defense with barkskin increases resistances. You give critical chance to crit to your friends or yourself. Lightning spells, which you can convert to AoE, chain lightning, and so on and so forth. And create a cascade that they trigger when you crit, and it goes from one to the other and to another, spreading shock. And you can play with that because you have a lot of different paths. You can make that trigger a little bit more. Of course, everything is based on augmenting spells. Every single specialization here gets the paddle that augments spells and reduce enemy movement. And the second healing spec, which is the third one and the last one, the Depth of His. Bigger heals, which also require you to deal damage to apply things, and you have to be very good at applying the purity around so you can do more damage, and also kind of feels like you can deal more damage to chaos, another race against chaos. And the most important thing the elves have, the Archmage actually have, for me, I'm going to take from this because there's also the warrior priest to heal, there's also the rune priest to heal. I think the most important thing the Archmage has for me is the ability to see stealth units and get them out of stealth. I think they will be super useful to small scale mainly. It's going to change. It's definitely going to change the battlefield with that. Having the ability to see stealth units and take them out of stealth is going to be a mayhem out there. I can already see how people will be very cocky to go out with a stealth shaman or a stealth doc, for example, and then an Archmage comes along as a healer of a group, and pretty much everybody's going to win one. And so there's 2 guys over there. Let me show you. Boom, out of stealth. You know, they won't be able to have that. Oh, they're coming to kill me. Let me stealth and run the fuck away. No, you're not. If there's an Archmage there, you're screwed. Right. That's the thing I'm taking from this. So far, good heals, mobile or more steady with bigger heals, offensive support, which gives you increased critical chance to you or your group or both. And mainly for me, the ability to see stealth units and take them out of stealth.